Hello and welcome to another episode of Cram, Sesh here on Push Your Glasses Up. I'm Mikey. We are going over Screams 1, 2, 3, and 4 on this here episode. Today I am joined by a friend of the show, Tara, who I know from San Diego Comic-Con and needing a place to stay. But we'll get to that in a minute. If you like this episode, if you like watching these videos, if you enjoy the podcast feed, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the RSS feed. We got trailer reactions here. We got plenty of these here, like franchise coverage episodes of the podcast. We have individual movies that we will be moving forward. The next episode of this very here show is covering the newest Scream. Get on top of it, like it so it gets into your feed quicker. Now, let's get into it. Hey Tara, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Of course. We know each other because Rena, former host of the show, and I, 1 year for Comic-Con, couldn't find a place to stay. And Rena found you guys, and we were able to have a nice spot in a very nice boutique little hotel.
It was pretty exciting. Trying to tell people that you were staying with strangers that you met on the internet was a whole whirlwind back then.
Yeah. Also, justifiably, I was the only guy, so that would have freaked a fair amount of people out, I think, that a male stranger would have been staying with you. But I'm grateful.
Unique situation, yeah.
Yeah, I'm grateful that you guys were all right with that.
And you know what? It was a great year, so it was really exciting to hang out with you guys and get to know everybody that year.
And frankly, for the most part, I was barely in the room.
Yeah. To be honest, I think all of us were.
I went to a lot of parties back then. So everyone was asleep when I got back, and everyone was already gone by the time I was waking up. So, but yeah, we are here to talk about Scream. This is a Cram Sesh episode. We are doing Scream 1, 2, 3, and 4 in this one. So, what is your history with the franchise?
I think it's like being similar ages. Like it was one of those things where everybody really was into it during like our high school years and stuff like that. So like, definitely the first one came out. I mean, what, 96, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
So like I would have been still pretty young at that point. But I think it was one of those kind of like slasher sort of like great films where, everybody starts to get into horror movies just kind of as a genre, like in, the mid to like later parts of like high school and stuff. And two of my good friends at the time were very, very into like the Scream franchise and everything else. So a little bit for me, like I missed the boat a little bit with that. I think it was just one that I always enjoyed the movies, but like wasn't super as into it as like some of my friends and stuff were. But it was funny because now being taking like film classes and film school and stuff, I hadn't rewatched the first one for ages. Like it's probably been a good like 10 years or something like that. Mm-hmm. Rewatching it after such a time difference, like kind of like from it, I really enjoyed it. Like I had to watch it for my horror movie class, and like I think I missed out on the rewatchability of the films because you watch it the first time and you're kind of trying to figure out the storyline and everything like that. You watch it the second time when you know who the killers were. There is so much depth to them. Like watching like the little bits and like kudos to like the whole cast, because like you watch like Billy Loomis and like there's so much like moments where like he's just literally like acting with his eyes and you pick up on that like the second time kind of like watching it. So yeah, but I like went to the theater for like Scream 4 when it came out, and I thoroughly enjoyed that one. Which is funny because I think it's one of the most hated out of like all of them. But I had a love-hate sort of relationship for a while with them. But I definitely do really enjoy the films, especially from a filmmaking and I don't know, just iconically pop culture sort of like reference to them.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
I did not get to see the first movie. Like you said, we were of similar ages. I did not get to see the first movie or second movie in the theaters. I did see the third movie in theaters. But the first movie when it came out, it was one of those movies where I had been brought to rated R movies with my uncle.
Yeah.
So I saw Speed when I was like 8.5 years old in the theater.
Yeah.
But that's a very different kind of rated R movie. And
Yeah.
my mom was not as keen on me going to see something like this without her having seen it first. And she
Hmm.
said no. So my history with the franchise is seeing them on video when they came to video. So I still saw them right away. I just happened to see them at a friend's house instead.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw 1 and 2 soon after they were released on VHS, and then I saw 3 in theaters. I actually never saw 4 until I rewatched them leading into the new movie.
Yeah.
And I we'll get to it, but I am on the positive side of that movie, and I do think that movie, I don't even know if I want to say that movie is a split, right? Like, I don't even know if a lot of people hate it. I think a lot of people love it and a lot of people hate it at like an equal level, because
Yeah.
I think it's just this franchise has so many different tones that, like,
Hmm.
if it satisfies somebody looking for a slightly more serious thing, it's gonna not satisfy the people who love 3. So
Yeah.
yeah. So
Which is funny. I think it's like at the end of the day, like same thing, like rewatching all of them, like I think three is probably my favorite of the bunch, but like being a film kid and like watching that one and it's so, meta and
it's
also like
chaos. That
just an
movie is
interesting
chaos.
yeah, but like just an interesting take on like just filmmaking in general and all of the rest. And then I don't know, I like the him being that killer and kind of like it felt like full circle in so many ways. So I think that one was
Right.
probably my favorite out of all of them, but I still enjoy all of them. It's kind of a general sort of like thing.
Yeah. I am of the mind that they are all good for different reasons. But I think my ranking is probably going to be quite different from yours. For what we take in from the different things.
I think
But
it's one of
the
those things where it's like they're like our children, you love all of them equally.
right, yeah, exactly. So the first movie is, I mean, it's a groundbreaking movie. It is a
Hmm.
very self-referential as well as referential to the genre as a whole. Obviously, it is overt in so many ways with that, with the naming of characters and like just
Hmm.
all of that. It's a take on every subgenre of slasher. Uh,
Yep.
and it is, like, for me, one of the best horror movies ever made because of that. But also, it is. We'll get to it with the next episode. But I think that this is in a tie for the best movie in the franchise for
Hmm.
me. But yeah, I have my problems with it because it is weirdly, it's very 90s,
Yeah. That's
but
what I was gonna say. It's such a product of its time period at the same time. Like it holds up, but like it's so 90s.
it's also like very much a late 80s movie at the same time
Yeah.
because of how it's referencing things, and
Yeah.
it's a little confused because of that. I
Yeah.
think if it managed to lean, like, I think Scream 2 is a way more 90s movie than Scream 1, for that reason. But I
Mhm.
think that if it was able to not pull back from the references so much, and by references in this case I just mean like tonally,
Yeah.
but I think if it was able to do that a little bit more, it would have fit itself into a single era instead, because they do, like, you leave the first movie and the second movie and third movie, like, those feel like they're together, and Scream 1 feels like it's kind of off to the
It's its own
side.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because like I don't know, being a film student in general, like I very much enjoy looking at like the historical sort of like context like around films at the time too, because it gives such a like a an interesting take on like the reasons why they do or did certain like aspects of it. And it's funny because even we did Scream like this year for one of, like I said, my horror movie class that we did, and one of the articles that we read talked about the fact that it's like realistically, like horror was kind of dying out like in that period. So this movie just blew everybody away in how like well it was received, but how it, like you said, it also took all of that 80s sort of like popular slasher sort of like genres and just it really reinvented like so much of what they had kind of done at that point. And like even just the fact that like having two killers, like that was just a mind-blowingly different sort of like thing at that point.
Yeah, and not like there's that, but then there's also like they marketed the movie with Drew Barrymore as the star, and
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
gone right away.
Just that like that full like bait and switch, like
yeah.
so cool. Like even that in general.
And it's I would say that the first movie is probably the most creative out of the three. Despite the fact that it's playing on those pastiches that like already exist and whatnot. But as far as like the kills go and subverting what you expect while having a focus on the things is like it does a better job than the rest of, I think, the franchise with like setting the rules but not letting you fall for the safety of the rules and whatnot, because you have that moment where Randy is watching Halloween and he's talking about the rules and he's supposed to die in that moment with he's talking to the audience telling you he's about to die, and then it just doesn't happen. So there are distinct things that they do let out with, you know, with the rules. But I have a weird thing with this movie where I love it, but I don't love it the same way that I used to love it. And it's funny because I can go back to the original Nightmare on Elm Street, the original Halloween, the original more Friday the 13th Part 2. But and I love those the same way that I loved them originally. This is a film class movie. And so as you kind of grow beyond just enjoying a thing and you actually dissect stuff a little bit more, it kind of changes it. It's seeing how the sausage is made a little bit.
Yeah. It's funny because like at least in my sort of like take on it, like I'm kind of the opposite. Like I found it very kind of like, I think because at that point, the point that I'd watched the first Scream, I'd watched a fair amount of like other horror movies and whatnot, I think at that point. So like I missed out on some of that like nostalgic, like, oh, this is, you know, one of the first horror movies that people would watch and enjoy and having it be different and stuff. Whereas like, I don't know, I felt like a little bit of an old hat by the time I finally watched it. Whereas like revisiting it and watching for those moments where like, you know, Billy and Stu were like making eyes at each other, or, you know, Billy's like tipping his hat a little bit as he's being his creepy little self. I enjoyed that aspect of it, like the rewatchability of it, where it's just like, oh my god, did you see like that look? Like, or, you know, like there was a lot of subtlety that was put into it that I completely missed like the first time watching it. So I enjoyed it for that, like overall.
Yeah, and that's my thing is like I still enjoy it the same amount, just a different perspective on why now, which is like that is actually a good thing in the long run, because the more you see something, you should like actually sort of digest it more and figure things out a little bit more and see more detail. So I think it is the one that's going to age the best out of all of these, despite the fact that it's so locked into when it was made. But yeah, so now let's talk about Scream 2, which now is when we like these middle movies are where we really get the like everybody's ranking is all over the place, because I'll sort of spoil the ending a little bit. I think that the first three movies are just a staircase. They are just, one is up here, 2 is here, and 3 is here.
Fair.
Three is still great. It is a campy, chaotic movie that, you know, it is what it is, but I just think it kind of like it maybe went a little too far.
Yeah.
But 2 is sort of where I marked out the most, I think, when I was younger, because it was just the right age. I was like, was that one 98?
I believe so, yes. Somewhere around there.
So
Yeah,
that's
it was like 2 years later or something, I think.
so
Yeah.
that's when I'm like, the first movie came out, I was like 11 or 12.
Yeah.
And this is when I'm like young teenager. So I'm that little bit, that year and a half difference is enough where it's just like I'm all in on this like cultural thing. And it's
Yeah.
so that one I did go crazy on. I, like, bought the soundtrack, what like
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
despite the fact that the best song on any of the soundtracks is Nick Cave, I still like, I went crazy over the fact that there was like a Sugar Ray song that is a tribute to Weezer and like Less Than Jake and stuff. So for me,
Yep.
it I went hard with Scream 2. But yeah, it's, you see the difference in the styles already start to kind of, and part of that I think this one is where they switched cinematographers. So you
Yeah, I
start
think
to
so.
see a real different vibe. Like the first movie has those like Nightmare on Elm Street like crane shots that come down and stuff. And then
Yeah, really.
this movie just feels like a completely, like, it doesn't feel like it's trying to play on other movies anymore. It just kind of is its own thing now.
Well, it's funny you say that because, like, I think watching this one, I see so much of the vibes of like, I Know What You Did Last Summer and like urban legends and like
It's more
all
of
of
that era.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah, like all of those sort of like ones. So it's like and I don't know the time periods for those ones. I think most of those were like 98, like 99, somewhere
I
around there.
think most of those were actually technically right after this movie.
Yeah, so
I
like,
think it was the 99 to like 2002 stretch.
mhm.
Yeah.
And it's funny that all of those like took everything that like Scream kind of like was and then changed it into that sort of like thing. And then Scream 2 basically did the same sort of like thing with that, I don't know, so much of that like college university, like people get murdered sort of like storyline. But it's funny too because like, yeah, you mentioned like us probably having like really different like rankings, and I would say 2 is probably my least favorite of the bunch.
Yeah.
Just because of like, I don't know, like the um I didn't mind the jump, like the, I don't know how much spoiler are we kind of like getting with it, but like
These are old ass movies. We can we can do whatever we want.
I didn't mind like Mickey being the killer, and then having like Billy Loomis's like mom like being like the secondary killer like made a lot of sense. I wish we'd seen more of Timothy Olyphant like being crazy, because I think that was like a just a delightful, I mean, I could watch him in anything, so I'm a little biased, but like he was just unhinged. And it was so interesting to watch him be that sort of like level of crazy, but it didn't play long enough for me. I wanted a little bit more from that.
Yeah, I prefer the Mrs. Loomis reveal more than the Mickey reveal, because I feel like
Yeah.
the Mickey reveal wasn't set up for anything.
Yeah.
And at least with Mrs. Loomis, you have the previous movie as set up. So even though she's not really introduced as Mrs. Loomis through the whole second movie, it's still, there's plenty of groundwork done just in lore. But like Mickey,
Yeah.
he was just there.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. At least like
And
with the
it's funny.
first movie, everyone,
Yeah.
like the everyone is a suspect thing. Everyone is involved with it. Whereas like there's almost just too many characters in the second movie where it's just like,
Yeah.
well, now it doesn't matter because if everyone's a suspect and there's 45 people I have to pay attention to. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and same thing too, like you said, like everybody, it felt like there was less stakes, for at least the emotional stakes for like some of the characters dying and stuff too. Like Sarah Michelle Gellar's character, I think Cece, I believe is her name. Like when she gets killed, like it just felt like a like cannon fodder. Like it didn't feel like it had any sort of like stakes to it, other than, you know, if you'd been a fan of the Buffy show, being like, what the hell? Like
Yeah.
Buffy dies? Like but I don't know, yeah, just it felt like this one lost out a lot for emotionally caring about some of the people and some of the deaths and stuff. So I don't know. Like I said, it was kind of like a hit or miss for me.
And it also doesn't have that, like, this is where we start to have the intros be the movies in the movies. And so it's like, is this the one with Heather Graham at the beginning of it? But like, we start seeing like big actors being taken out, but not really taken out. So it doesn't have the same impact as a big name like Drew Barrymore, where it's just like, we never really get attached to her as a character, but we still have that like, holy shit, they just killed Drew Barrymore in this movie. It's like, I don't even remember the character's name most of the time. I just think of it as Drew Barrymore getting killed.
It's true. Yep.
Which is unfortunate, but also like, this is the way it is. But the thing with the follow-ups to the movies doing that is it kind of takes that away in a similar way that like everybody that's dealing with the current situation also is just like, in Scream 2, like, we know who a lot of these actors are now.
Yeah.
In 98, did we?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like Jada Pinkett Smith, like, was the her and I forget the other gentleman's name,
but
like they were the ones. Yes, yeah. They were the ones in the
Mike
movie
Epps?
theater getting
Omar Epps.
like Omar Epps. Yeah, that sounds
an
right.
Epps. It was an Epps.
Yeah.
Well, and Jada Pinkett Smith.
Sometimes names are like
Jada Pinkett Smith. I didn't really know until the second Matrix movie. So like that's when I was like, oh, I think she's from Scream 2. And that was just how that kind of worked. But yeah, it was.
Like, wait a minute.
That's sort of the issue I have with the majority of this cast is just like they're not ingrained to the audience as much, so it would require more well-known character or more well-known actors to make the impact of the kills kind of come forward and the impact of just the reveals come forward. Like back then, sure, Timothy Olyphant, huge now.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would say I'm in the same kind of situation, probably even further than the Jada Pinkett Smith thing, where I didn't know Timothy Olyphant until more like 2003 or 4.
Yeah, it was about that time where he hit my radar too, because I think it was another movie called The Girl Next Door, and he was wonderful in that. And then it was pretty much from there.
Eliza Cuthbert movie. Yes.
Yeah. And then
Alicia Cuthbert. I'm having a bad name day.
Alicia Cuthbert.
I'm having a bad.
I just
name
went
day.
like, Leisure Discourse.
Yeah.
But the other thing with like the Scream 2, like for me at least, was that I had already seen the Scary Movie that parodied most of this before I think I saw Scream 2. So it was kind of a hard watch for me because like it was so, I don't know, the parody was so like ingrained into my head that watching like even like the movie theater scene like at the beginning and stuff, like it kind of lost the scare and became more funny in a lot of different ways, being like, oh yeah, that was that scene.
Because it's no longer just referencing other things, it's now referencing itself. And it's sort of a snake eating its own tail with how serious you can take it. And I guess that is the trajectory of the trilogy of the first 3 movies, is like, they just get goofier and goofier. So like, yeah, I guess that tracks and makes sense. But like, it's not the way that I would have preferred it to go. And that's why I kind of have that kind of step down to it, because the second movie still is goofier than the first movie, but it takes itself a little more seriously still. Although Randy in Scream 2 is far more of a cartoon character. he has the shaggy goatee. He had like
and so even just like his acting like goes to like 100.
Everything
a lot of it
goes
too.
up.
Yeah. So like even I just always think of that him yelling on the phone like as he's walking around and stuff like that, just being like just so offended.
Well, the funny thing about that too is like it's almost like that moment is the Jennifer Love Hewitt moment from I Know What You Did Last Summer. And it's like like all of these movies after the first Scream movie, even the Scream sequel, start to just blend together. And so it's just it kind of takes away from the originality of the first, not of the first movie, but like following the first movie, because they're all just they're doing what every other movie is now doing, which is like that is a compliment to the first movie, but it's not so much the second movie and the third movie, which we can.
And I think, I think the second one too was trying to like, I don't know, still like have that shock sort of like stuff. Like nobody was expecting Randy to die, I'm sure. Like one of those things being like, oh, surprise, we're gonna kill off like, you know, a main character that, you know, I think that was the most surprising moment of like the film. And it's funny because I have like my one friend was so salty about that death for the longest time because she was like she, you know, enjoyed that character so much. But she was just like, how could you kill him off? Like
he needed to go make Son of the Mask. It's fine. Something else had
choices.
to happen.
Life choices.
So let's continue this trajectory into the goofiness with the third movie, which I love for how campy it is, but I don't love in the terms of like in what I want from a Scream movie, but I love how campy it does get. Parker Posey is my birthday buddy. We have the same birthday. And half of the stuff she does in this movie feels like improv, which I love. It's like she came off Waiting for Guffman to this and was like just still in the same mind frame.
All
like,
in.
When
Like,
when she crawls into Patrick Warburton's arms, I'm like, there's no way that was scripted. There's zero chance that was scripted. And I really enjoyed that. Well, that's the thing is I love those things. I just separate it off from being a Scream movie at that point.
Yeah.
So but yeah, you said this is your probably favorite movie in the franchise, which I think a lot of people agree with you. I will not take that away from you. I think a lot of people do agree with you because it is a POV preferential thing in this franchise.
It metas the meta. Like I don't know. I just enjoy that aspect of it where it's just like all of them coming into contact with like their doppelgangers basically, and like the whole bit, like you said, like, you know, with Parker Posey and playing off against Gale, and both of them being each other in so many different ways. Like just I enjoyed a lot of that aspect of it. I think I would have liked it maybe a little bit more if like Sydney's, you know, double in the film had a little bit more interaction, like kind of how Gale and the two of them kind of like interact.
Which actress was the double for her?
Don't remember her name. I don't think I've seen her in much else, to be honest. But like, I don't know. And then like killing Cotton at the beginning of it, like that was just really entertaining too, because you were just not really expecting it either.
It's such a weird thing though, because like with all of these, with the things that it is parodying in a way, I'm not using that as an insult. It's just it's making referential things to these other, but all those other movies stay in one location, and like sure the second movie is like Scream at college, but like it still feels more like they're in a small town. To bring it to LA, kind of like I love New Nightmare. And it is getting to the point where it's like if New Nightmare was an actual cartoon. And it's getting away from the things that I love about the first movie, which is the like small town thing. Now it's like Scream's gone global, and it's just
bigger and better.
Which is
now with more people.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's hard to not do that because it is like the franchise then focuses on the movie within the movie, and a movie is going to be an international phenomenon that they want to cover. So so I get that, but like it just Jason is always, I mean, he goes to Manhattan. I get that, but like Jason is generally at Crystal Lake and always in the town by Elm Street and always in Illinois for Halloween. And it's just like Illinois, Indiana, whatever. Middle states.
That's okay. You know more than I do, so.
Hey, you're in a completely different country, so it's fine. But it's those sort of touchstones that this
Mhm.
doesn't carry anymore. That I'm just
Yeah.
kind of like, it's great, but it doesn't feel like that anymore. So yeah,
Well, it's like Westboro is like another character in the film, right? So
yeah,
like I understand that completely. Where it's like, even like you said, when I honestly most of the time forget that their college was not set in Westboro too, because they're all there. So like, and
yeah.
everybody is a part of it at some point or another. So it's like, oh yeah,
It's like just over city limits. They just like
yeah, like just the other side, like a little bit out of town.
they actually just walk to campus.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the third one being such a different setting and not really, I guess, utilizing that as another character, it does feel really weird. I think they tried to bring the town in like by having it like on the set and stuff like that, but they travel so much around like Hollywood that it just kind of takes you out of it sometimes. So like I get what you mean about that. Like it loses that sort of like insular kind of like feeling with it, and
Yeah.
it becomes a little bit more, I don't know. I like the playfulness of it. Like I do like them being like, what if this is going to be like a movie within a movie, and then her, especially the scene where she walks through like the house and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I thoroughly enjoy that scene because it's very
Well, that's bringing it back to
processing.
Woodsboro
Hmm.
in the way that I would like it to. But
Yeah,
it's also just like not just Woodsboro. It's the fact that like Sydney's like not the focus of this movie. It's
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
weird when like at the time we didn't think we were getting a Scream 4. So like
yeah.
to have the main character from the first two movies not really be the focus for the first half of the movie is a
And
little
yeah,
weird.
having it mostly be like Gail and her sort of like thing, and well, because wasn't she like she wasn't.
It's Scooby Doo, but like
Mhm.
they left Scooby out of it. Like
Yeah, like what would we do if we the main character wasn't really part of it for half of it was,
yeah.
and it was like half of the film that she's not really in it. So yeah, I agree. It's kind of a weird sort of like choice that they did that, but I think like I said, I still enjoyed a good portion of this for, I don't know, like the I don't know, playful is a good word, I guess, to
Yeah.
kind of use with it. Like it's having fun and it knows what it's doing and it's just being ridiculous for most of it. So like, camp, I like anything that has good camp quality to it. So it's
Yeah.
probably why I enjoy this one.
And I've grown over the years to appreciate that more and more for anything as well as far as things go. But it's just
Mhm.
like I have these two different feelings on this movie that like just can't find middle ground on. Where it's just like if I don't consider it a Scream movie, I love it. If I
Mhm.
consider it a Scream movie, I'm just like, it's fine. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's there's a moat within me that cannot be crossed. Um,
I did. I think I also think like plot wise enjoyed them tying it up as much as they did. Like having it be like her brother character being the one that really like was instrumental in putting together all of it. And but that's the thing, like looking then at like the fourth and now the fifth like movie and stuff, like it kind of, I guess it negates that storyline in a way because like just having the three of them would have been a nice like neatly packaged sort of like thing where it was, yeah, he was the one that you know encouraged Billy to like be all psychotic and like everything else. Whereas introducing like further sort of like films just feels like, oh yeah, that was another crazy psycho person way before. Yeah.
well, that's sort of the thing is it's doing a thing that other late entries and franchises do, which is like they were there the whole time,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
like in those movies it is a bad thing. Like it's not
Yeah.
in like a Friday the 13th part 47. It's not
Mm-hmm.
a good thing to be like, yeah, and they were actually hiding under the bed the whole time
Yep.
in the first movie, so they came back. And so it's one of those things where I'm like, I get that they're referencing that kind of thing, but like, it's a character I haven't cared about at all, and he's an asshole through the whole movie.
Yep.
Like
Yep. He's
I
literally
don't
just a
like this
whiny
character.
baby.
I I I don't like Alias's husband in this
Mm-hmm.
movie.
Yep.
But yeah, it's ex-husband. Sorry. But
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
I yeah, it's these. If that's why I have to say, like, if I think of it as like not a Scream movie, if I think of this as a scare, like an entry in scary movie, I enjoy it more than if it's if it's a Scream movie. But
No,
yeah.
it's fair. And even like introducing like just the like you said, like the campy sort of like effect of like him at the end, like, you know, just not dying repeatedly.
Yeah.
And then his final death just, you know, being so over the top and so ridiculous. It's definitely interesting in that. And then I mean like they tried to wrap everything up, and I think some of that is what I really enjoyed. Like Sydney gets a man, like, you know, like Gail and Dewey end up together. Like
I know what you're saying. It's just a very funny way to say. Sydney gets a man.
well, it's like, you know, and he's like, well, I mean, at the time at least, he's a
Patrick
police officer,
Dempsey,
so he
man,
can protect her. And
the
like,
guy from
yeah.
the 80s. It's fine.
Yep. But yeah, like it's a fun way to kind of like wrap everything up in that sort of like sense. So
Yeah.
it was interesting that, you know, interesting in that sense.
Yeah, there's a thing at the end of this movie that always annoys me, and it's that she lives in the woods and leaves her door wide open, and I'm like, there's gonna be so many mosquitoes in your house,
right?
It's
that being like,
not
no.
a problem with like the movie as a whole, like with that. It's just I grew up in a very rural area. You're gonna get mosquitoes in that house.
Yep. Like, talk about just a walking like bug hotel at that point. Or like, you know, you're still in the Californian sort of like area, I'm thinking. So it's like, what about like bears?
That is also true. Yeah, if you're in like the Tahoe area, maybe it kind of seems like it could be. Yeah, there would definitely be the whole Hank the Tank story from earlier this year. We got that going on.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like, not even a screen door or anything. Like,
yeah, just put up a screen. That's all I'm saying. Light a citronella candle. So let's move on to the fourth movie, which I will preface, of the first 4 Scream movies, I think this is my second favorite one.
Yeah.
And
that
is
really
where I'm
saying
is a differential from possibly the rankings. But it's, yeah, I appreciate that it makes a little more fun instead of just trying to parody. It does actually make fun of the bad horror that was coming out around this time. the late 2000s and early 2010s horror that I don't care to really watch ever again. But this is the first time I've seen. Go ahead.
Some of those, I was gonna say, some of those ones from like that 2006 to like 2010 era are some of my favorite horror movies. So I'm kind of a mixed bag on this.
Well, I think it's, again, for different reasons. I think that people enjoy them as Mystery Science Theater 3000ing them a lot more than actually, like, the best one is probably the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, which is still like a C+, I would say.
I did enjoy that one, so
I like that one. I think that is probably the best remake of that whole era, because that era is chock full of them. With the CG Freddy Kruegers and the, it was a rough time.
I mean, honestly, I did really enjoy the Nightmare on Elm Street remake too. So like, I have really weird taste. Like, I'm not always the greatest judge. People are like, how do you like these?
I will never tell somebody they shouldn't like something. I will just say why I don't. But it's,
to be fair, I think my liking for a lot of them was had to do with a lot of the cast that was usually in
Right.
a lot of
Yeah.
those movies. Like I would watch
Just a big Jackie Earl Haley head.
basically, yeah, yeah. I mean, I enjoyed him in Watchmen at that point, but no, it was
Yeah.
mostly Kyle Gallner. Like, I have thoroughly enjoyed probably everything that that gentleman has been in, and like Haunting in Connecticut, like, yeah, him doing Nightmare on Elm Street, him being in Scream 5 was only vaguely disappointing, but I'm sure we'll get to that.
Next
But yeah,
episode.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it just a lot of, I think those remakes and stuff had to do with people that were in them that I enjoyed
Right.
watching those performances rather than maybe the films themselves. And I think this one kind of falls under that category for me too. Like, Rory Culkin, like, being in it and being like one of the killers, like, I remember really enjoying that sort of like moment. And I think that I
Hayden
remember her name
Panettiere
being,
is fantastic in this movie.
yeah,
She's the best
yeah,
part of
like,
this movie.
I love her.
Yeah.
In general, she's just
I'm honestly
5
pretty
stars.
pissed with how the character with how the story ends in this movie. Sure, we never see the character die, but to get an announcement that she is in the upcoming Scream 6 instead of just being a surprise made me real mad.
I kind of agree. Like, I feel it felt like a little pandering to like the fans, because the Twitter
which
sphere,
I'm all for that. I
people
want her in that movie. But
like announcing
wanted,
it.
It's like going into a Marvel movie. You don't want to like know ahead of time that Cap is going to hold Mjolnir. And that's Hayden Panettiere is the same thing for me coming back in Scream 6.
Oh, I totally agree. Like, yeah, it would have been nice to have it as like a surprise. Like, well, I know it's really hard to keep that sort of stuff surprise, but like, I think it would have had more, like you said, more like almost like a more impact.
Film it on a closed set, you're fine. It's totally,
especially she was so iconic in Scream 4. Like,
yeah, she's the most memorable part of that whole movie, and that is another thing I will say is a thing that I think is immemorable about this movie is Emma Roberts, after the reveal that she is one of the main killer of the two killers. I do not think that she does a very good job after that reveal. I think she is a horrible performer in terms of trying to convey an intimidating killer. Does not work. I just don't. I like I said, this is my second favorite Scream movie of the first 4.
Yeah.
I hated this part. I'm fine with the reveal of the character being a killer. I think legitimately, I usually do not like punch a performance like this. I think her playing like the smug, like I'm going to get, it doesn't work. She just doesn't know how to convey that, which is like, not everybody can, but like, it just doesn't work for me. And to that point, I think is maybe a little on the nose for the Rory Culkin character to be revealed as well.
Yeah,
it's the like whole time he
sort
is
of like
Well, it's the Randy thing where it's just like the reason why Randy worked is because he was the innocent person. He was the fact that they made the like replacement Randy the killer is just a little too obvious to me. And so like,
and I agree. Like, I think I would have bought it more if the guy with like the camera gear and stuff like that. I think he was
the guy from Scott Pilgrim.
Yes,
the guy who worked with a different Culkin.
Yeah, I was like, I would have believed it more. Like, oh man, my brain just made that connection. Thank you. I was like, he was Crash. He was from Crash and the Boys. That's amazing.
So
yeah, like I think I would have.
Sad.
I love those movies, but I love that movie. Yeah, like I think I would have bought it more if like he had been like one of the killers or something like that. Like it would have been, I don't know, it would have given it more of like that edge, and then especially like being like the tech savvy sort of like stuff. Like I buy the arc of like Jill being the murderer, and the reason why she wants to do it is to she's sick of Sydney having the spotlight and like whatnot. I did buy that, but mostly because I think she just I don't know, every character that I've watched her in anything, she's always played crazy so well. So like her playing the innocent character was the part that I didn't believe.
Right.
And then when she did the flip and then she was, the psycho, I was just like, oh yeah, that's fair.
Well, yeah, I think that's probably part of the problem is like it's now we're in a movie where we're supposed to suspect her.
Yeah.
And we know that she does that other stuff that where she plays the same kind of thing. So yeah, it's yeah, the thing I like the most about this movie is that it is a little bit more serious of a tone, even though it's a parody of that era being hyper serious again instead of like it's parodying the reaction to Scream 3, right? So it's I appreciate that it's trying to, even though it's like 3 layers out looking down on itself, that it's getting a little more focused in tone, which we'll get to with the next movie.
Yeah.
But like it's I think it gets even better than this one. But yeah, I do think that like Scream 3 is far more memorable than this movie.
Yeah.
But I think this is more solid of a movie, right? Where it's just like, I'm not going to need to watch Scream 4 10 times, but I'll watch Scream 3 no matter how many times I watch it. I will watch it again because it is a fun, like, that's the movie that you sit down on Halloween and watch with your friends, right? That's Scream 4. If you didn't see it in theaters like me, you're gonna watch it on a random Thursday and like
and it's one of those like really funny ones too, because it's like that first like section where like it's Kristen Bell and
the nine different movie intros
that I loved. Like that was it was so well put together and so well like like, oh, is this the end? Is this the end? No? Okay.
Like, so that one was what? Anna Paquin and Kristen Bell.
Anna Paquin. All I could hear was Fly Away Home, and I was like, no, can't say that.
And then what was the next level? The girl from the Friday Night Lights TV show. And someone else I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember.
But there were 3 levels of it though, right?
Yeah.
Because there was one where it was the brunette, I believe.
Yes, and like they're
that's sort of the problem with these movies.
And like
that's sort of the problem with these movies is like eventually it's just like I already have a hard time sometimes like tonight like pulling up names, and now you're throwing in within like 4 minutes 15 people, and I'm just like I can't do it all. Yeah.
I just like I think as a sequence like by itself, if we're looking at like the openers for like all the films, that is my favorite opener though, because it just keeps going like, and I think it's one of those almost like that.
When a joke runs its course and is no longer funny, but then it comes back around again because you just keep saying it.
I've heard people like call it like the Family Guy effect almost, like where it just runs for so long that it becomes but it becomes that sort of like funny again, right? Like I don't watch those shows, but like
it's Peter banging his knee and going the like
forever.
Exactly.
But done in such a like a delightful way, like it doesn't feel like it's too long, like it knows exactly like how to run its course to make it perfect,
right?
And
you're laughing when you're like, how long is this gonna that's the thing is you could say like, how long is this gonna go in 2 different tones. One is how long is this gonna go, and one is how long is this gonna go. Like and
feel like I want to know the ending.
And they found the happy side of that, which is very good. But yeah, that's why I enjoy this movie a lot more. I think it finds the balance of the funny and the taking itself seriously, as opposed to just being like balls to the wall, like the previous film, which, like I said, that movie has its place. That movie has a more, it has longevity in a way that is more fun.
Yeah.
Whereas I just think Scream 4 is technically a better movie if I'm like sitting down and doing the math. So it's, they're just different things.
there had to be a reason for them to want to come back to like revisit it, and I think it handled that like very well. I think the only thing that I was, and I still feel like slightly disappointed at, is like the rating for it. Like it doesn't feel like the deaths are, because a lot of it happens kind of like off screen and
Yeah.
everything else. So like it feels very toned down in
I
that
wonder
sort
if
of like
that
sense.
was an intentional thing, because so much of that era was PG-13 horror
Yeah,
that they were just
yeah,
like, no, we're gonna keep stuff off, even though we're going
yeah.
for R, we're still gonna cut away from the actual puncture and stuff.
Yeah, I think unfortunately at that point, like they did not see R-rated like horror films as being like marketable
Profitable.
and everything
Yeah.
else like that. Yeah, so it was trying to reach that wide audience of everybody. So
Which and
I
that still happens. We still get movies like The
yeah,
Winchester, and it's just like nobody wanted that. Nobody cared.
I
Like
saw Haunted
Helen
House film.
Mirren
It was
is one of the
fun.
greatest actors of all time. You're not gonna get me to go to a PG-13 horror movie where
Yeah,
she's in a house that changes a bunch. Like it's
yeah.
I
It has
I
its
worked in a movie theater at the time and I didn't see it. I
I
had
think I was
free movies and I didn't see it.
yeah, I remember that feeling. Yep, where you're like free tickets, and I still don't know if I want to watch this movie.
I had a very good time with Rampage though.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yep.
yeah. So yeah, before we finish up this episode
Mhm.
of the show, would your ranking be 3, 1, 4, 2?
Probably like
Okay.
I think it's funny because like I flip flop a little bit with it because like after rewatching, like I said, the first one, I do find the first one in is so much of the I don't know. I think my brain latched on to like
It's a
so much
more
of that stuff that was
fascinating
so
movie.
subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah, like and it's funny too because in a like weird happenstance, there was a movie that we were watching for my detective film class that came out at about the same time as Scream. And I have this random theory that I don't think I could ever even prove, but there's a lot of the serial killer. The movie's Copycat. It has
Yep.
Sigourney Weaver in it, and like there's a lot of the serial killer in that
Robert Downey Jr.?
that is no, I forget
Oh
his
no, that's
name.
In Dreams I'm
Um,
thinking of with
yeah, but like
Annette Bening. Yeah.
but this one, yeah, like the whole point of like this serial killer sort of like character is that he copycats other serial
Harry
killers to get.
Connick Jr.?
He was in it, yep, yep.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah,
Now I'm
so
back. I
I was gonna
remember
say he didn't.
I saw this again. It was a
Yeah,
VHS movie. That was the last time I saw it. It was like
yep,
1997. I just remember the VHS art. That's the majority
right.
of what I
And
remember.
it was funny because like I remember seeing it before, but like not seeing it for like years. But the serial killer that's in that is very similar to Billy Loomis in a lot of weird ways. And I think just even like the two of those kind of like watching them around the same time again, it was so fascinating, like in that sort of like sense. I really did enjoy the Billy Loomis character and like everything that is so subtle in that film, rewatching it and realizing
Yeah.
like all of the layers of like the subtlety to it. Like
Well,
my brain
and
just really
with
enjoyed
that
that.
character specifically, the fact that they hired Skeet Ulrich
Hmm.
specifically to look like I algorithm, do not put me into this crowd, please. To look like Johnny Depp.
Yeah, yeah.
It
That movie star like boyfriend, like
it
like
works perfectly for what they're doing for
yeah,
this movie. So we didn't even
yeah,
talk about like in general the fact that like Matthew Lillard's performance is just like one of the greatest performances ever on any screen.
yeah.
That's yeah.
Oh,
So
like
um
huge Matthew Lillard fan too. Like
yeah.
just he is perfection in pretty much everything that he does. So I thoroughly enjoyed him being that sort of ridiculously unhinged character, and
Yeah.
then yeah, like Skeet Ulrich being like sort of like the calm, cool, collected, but like yeah, it's just so enjoyable in that sort of like sense. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, I would probably put the first one and then the third one and then probably four and then two.
Okay. Yeah, for me it's 1, 4, 2, 3. Uh just be like because I have this weird thing where like when I'm doing a ranking of movies, I judge them by by being a movie as opposed to like if I necessarily enjoy them more.
That's fair.
And that's the thing is like I think I think 3 is the far more enjoyable movie to like, especially to revisit. But like 4, I think is just better structured and like it doesn't go too hard in one direction until Emma Roberts has a hard time.
Yeah.
but yeah, so that'll do it for this episode. We will come back and do an episode specifically for screams with a stylized 5S. But yeah, this episode, thank you for coming on to talk about these old ass movies. And until next time, bye.